Hi there, I'm Brian Goulet of gouletpens.com, and I'm excited to talk to you today about a new, brand of pens that we have here at gouletpens.com, Visconti. It is something that we are very excited to be offering now. We've actually been trying to be Visconti retailers for the last several years, and we recently connected with them at the 2015 DC Fountain Pen Super Show. So we hit it off really well, had a good meeting of the minds, good values alignment with them, and we're excited to be able to offer several models of their pens, but the first one that we're coming out with is their entry-level pen, the Visconti Rembrandt. Now, a little bit about Visconti. They were founded in 1988 by Dante Del Vecchio, a very innovative pen designer. Comes out with a lot of very interesting aspects of the pen, design, artistry, and filling systems, as well as nib design. Just a lot of really interesting stuff to talk about. And one interesting thing about Visconti, they're actually manufactured in Florence, Italy, and their manufacturing facility, if you call it that, is in a 15th century Italian villa. So I'll focus on the Rembrandt today, which is a pen that was inspired by the painter of the same name. One cool thing about Visconti is they have really good packaging. They really present their pens nicely. And even for what's considered their entry-level pen here, really nice packaging. So it comes in this box, and you slide out of the box. It's got this leatherette case, which, even though it's not real leather, by golly, it sure looks like it. It's got this little booklet in here that you can kind of flip through, and it talks a little bit about how they manufacture things, talks about their history and some of the other innovative pen designs that they've come up with. They do a lot of limited edition kind of stuff, so you can flip through that and enjoy some nice eye candy there. And then the box itself is kind of this, I don't really know how to explain it, but this rounded box, and you open it up. It's got the kind of a felt lining on the inside with the Visconti logo debossed in there, which is really nice. And it's got the pen sitting in here with a converter, and it has a cartridge that's sitting inside the pen. So you take the pen and you just kind of pull it outside of the plastic like this. And there's your box, which is, I don't know if you save your boxes or not, but this is one that might actually kind of be worth hanging on to. So it has a cartridge and a converter that comes with the pen, and that's all of the guts that come with it. So the material for the Rembrandt is really nice. It's called a variegated resin. So it's a resin that has a nice kind of swirl to it, and it's meant to mimic Rembrandt's chiaroscuro style of painting, which is basically fine lines and swirls that go within it. So all of these resins are not just a plain color, but they have kind of a swirl in them. So I have the colors here. I have 5 of them. This is the black, blue, ivory, purple, and red. And then there's one more pen called the merry-go-round, which is kind of a white with a bit of a rainbow swirl to it. It's got a little bit different clip, and the center band is a little different on this one. And this is a special edition pen that Visconti came out with. And this one was done in collaboration with the Myers Children's Hospital's Hematology Department in Tuscany, Italy, and a large portion of Visconti's profits go to help fund that program. So holding the pen in my hand, one nice thing about it is it's got a magnetic cap. So it's very easy to cap and uncap, which makes it great for writing down quick notes and things like that. And the reason I say writing down quick notes is because it's got this slick metal grip. And a slick metal grip personally is not like my #1 preference, just because I have oily fingers, and when I'm writing for a long period of time, it can slip around a little bit in my hand. Now, it's not necessarily that way for everybody, but that has been my personal experience. So what I tend to do is I use it for shorter writing stints. The nice thing about this grip in particular is that because it's got the magnetic cap, there's no threads or harsh step to worry about. So no matter where you're gripping on this pen, it's going to be comfortable for you, and there's not going to be anything to really agitate your fingers. So holding this pen in my hand, it's pretty well balanced when the pen is closed. When you open it up a little bit, it's going to be a little bit nib heavy. And the reason for that is because you've got a resin body on the pen, but the grip is metal. So it's going to be a little bit front weighted. It's not drastic, but it is something that's worth pointing out. When you post the pen, the cap is a decent portion of the overall weight of the pen, so it balances it out kind of nicely. It's a little bit back weighted maybe if you have smaller hands and you're gripping it closer to the nib, but my wife does that. She's got considerably smaller hands than I do, and she still posts it, and it's comfortable for her. She prefers to use it that way. Now, one thing I do want to point out, when you're posting it over a longer period of time, For whatever reason, I don't know if it's because the resin is softer than normal resins or something, but it does tend to have a little bit of scratching that can happen right here. It's not really noticeable. It's not deep scratch, just surface kind of stuff. The pen is very glossy, and so it just kind of has a little bit of a matte scratch that can happen on there. And what I find is that using a jeweler's cloth, just something you can pick up at the jewelry store, it's just a cloth that has a little bit of polishing compound that's built into it. You can just kind of take and then just rub it on the pen like so, and in 5 or 10 seconds you'll get all those scratches out. So it's something you may want to do every few weeks or so. Keep your pen looking fresh. Now the overall weight of the pen is 33 grams. You got 20 grams in the body of the pen and 13 in the cap. So that might help to tell you a little bit how it might balance out. To give you an idea of what pens are similar in weight, if you have a Pilot Vanishing Point, that's about 30 grams, so it's going to be fairly similar to that. And then a Lamy Studio is going to be right around the same weight as well. Now the nibs on the Rembrandt are stainless steel nibs of Visconti's design, and they're really beautiful nibs. They have this nice flourishing on them with the Visconti logo. Looks really, really attractive. And the feed on the back, actually, it's a plastic feed, which is not unusual for fountain pens, but it's actually got a little Visconti V on here, and then it has the Visconti name written on the air channel, which is kind of cool. I've never really seen that before. It's available in a fine, a medium, and a broad nib. I only have the fine and medium here because that's all we're going to be carrying at gouletpens.com as of the launch of this pen anyway. But I did want to let you know that there is a broad out there somewhere in the world. Now let's talk about how to fill the Rembrandt. This is a cartridge converter pen, which means it can take either cartridges or a converter. It actually comes with both. So when you open up the pen, it comes with a short Standard International black cartridge. You know, that could always change, but at least the one that comes in this pen is black. And you might be asking yourself, can it fit a Standard International long cartridge? It's the same style and the end will fit the same, but it is longer, and the consideration that has to be made with cartridge converter pens, with the long ones, is can the body of the pen fit it? Well, technically, yes, it can. I put one in this pen, and while it will fit in there, it kind of gets jammed up in the back of the pen, and then the cartridge kind of gets stuck back there. So you'll have to, use like pliers or something and pull it out. So not really super practical. So I would not necessarily recommend using long cartridges with it. I would stick to the short ones, or if you want to, you can use the converter, which is also supplied. The converter is this one. It's a Standard International, and it looks a little bit different than maybe the typical Standard International converter that you may see that's sold separately from any brand necessarily. A lot of brands will use Standard International, so it's not uncommon. So you have a lot of options in terms of which cartridges will fit in there. Of course, Visconti ones will, but a lot of other brands will carry them too. Same thing kind of goes with the converter. So if you're using a regular Standard International converter that you may have laying around, it'll also fit in this pen. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to use the one that's actually supplied with the pen, because that kind of makes sense, right? So got our converter installed now. So the ink that I'm going to be using for this particular video is Noodler's Black. I like Noodler's Black because it's the ink that I've standardized using in the Nib Nook tool on gouletpens.com, and it's a nice standard ink that I use, and I'm very familiar with it. So this is what I'm going to use to fill here today. So the way that this thing works is you've got a bottle of ink, and you need to submerge the nib and the grip all the way up until it gets to the grip section, so that you can get the ink up in there. It actually fills right from this little filler hole right here at the base of the grip. And the converter works just like any piston pen would, if you're familiar with that. It just screws and the piston moves up and down. So you move it all the way down, and then you dip it into your ink. And then you slowly draw it up in the pen. And you might have a little bit of an air bubble in the top here, and that's normal. So what I always do is I just push it back down, and now that you've got that feed that's saturated with ink, when you go to fill it again, you're going to get most of that air out of there, and you're going to get a much more of a full filling. And you can see here I've got very, very little air bubble here. And then all you do is you take a paper towel and you just wipe off your nib. And on this particular pen, because it's got that magnetic cap, it does have a little kind of secret hiding place that it likes to hide some of this ink. If you look right here, it's this ring right in here. So you just kind of take your paper towel, and what I do is I put my fingernail behind it, and then I just kind of use my fingernail and kind of get it in there. That way it gets all the hidden ink out of this little ridge right here. Wipe it off, put the body back on the pen, and I'm good to write. Now the pen's all inked up, let's go ahead and take it for a test drive. So I've got the fine nib first. The nib is really smooth. And I've got a really saturated ink in here. This is Noodler's Black, so you're not really going to see much shading or anything like that. That's one kind of disadvantage of using a black ink in a review like this, but it's a very wet pen. For a fine nib, this is about as wet as it gets. It's basically a medium nib, like a European medium nib. So it's going to be very wet. Dry time might be a little bit extended with most inks that you would use with this particular nib, and it's not going to necessarily be your best choice for really junky paper because it's going to put a lot of ink down on the page. So if you're using somewhat better paper and you have any element of control over your paper, that might be ideal for you. So let me take the medium nib for a test drive now. Now you might be kind of asking, like, Brian, did you get your pens mixed up? Well, no, the fine and medium nib really are this similar to each other. I actually had to ink up several pens just because I kind of wasn't sure. I was like, maybe I got a fluke or something like that, but it's fairly consistent. The fine and medium are really kind of both like a medium, so just kind of know that going into it. They're both going to be fairly wet, both going to be kind of closer to a European medium. So if you're going with a really if you have really junky paper and you don't have a lot of control, these are going to be pretty wet, fairly broad pens. So if that's the experience you're looking for, they write fantastic, and I think you'd really enjoy it. But if it's something that you're using on like a student grade planner or something like that where you don't have an element of control over the quality of your paper, this may not be the best choice for you. Now, even though these are stainless steel nibs, you can get a little bit of line variation with them if you're really kind of intentionally trying for it. It's not going to be enough to really brag about. It's going to be maybe one, maybe two line widths different, but it's possible. So it's going to be a fairly stiff nib generally, and you really don't want to write regularly with as much pressure as it would take to get some line variation, but it at least gives you some idea as to the softness of this nib. So the cap on this pen, there's actually quite a bit to talk about. So it is magnetic, which is pretty sweet, and it's actually really easy to undo. You can actually uncap it, even just with one hand. And it's kind of cool, if the cap's laying down on the table, you can cap it with one hand because it auto closes itself. So that's really kind of cool. Some other neat things going on with it. The design that's on this center band, it says Rembrandt on the front, and then it has this beautiful kind of flourishing on the back of it. So it's a really attractive center band. And it's kind of like a main feature that is just kind of standing out right in the middle of the pen. So the clip has a very distinctive, this is a very distinctive kind of Visconti element, and it's the same arch that is from the bridge that is called the Ponte Vecchio in Italy. And it's very distinctive. They have it on a lot of their different pens. And it's a spring clip as well, which is kind of nice because you can kind of pull up on it and you don't have to worry about bending the clip or anything like that. And it can fit on even some of the fatter, shirt materials. And then up in the top, it has this Visconti logo that you can see here, and it's got a really interesting system that's actually built into the finial of the pen. And it's going to take me a second to explain this. It's called the My Pen system. So Visconti has this little magnetic pickup tool that you can use. You can basically use any magnet, but this is their little tool, and you can pull that logo off the top. And you can actually replace it with other fun things. Like it has here, I've got the initials RG for my wife, and I can just kind of pick these up, and I might fumble a little bit, just bear with me, but you just kind of put these in place, and then you can have your initials kind of in place. A little yin and yang type design there, and then you can have the initials in the top of the pen. So that's kind of neat, and then you can just use a magnet to pull it out. It's definitely, the magnet's strong enough where it's not going to pull that stuff off of there normally. And then another neat little thing that Rachel did is you can actually get these little jewels as well. And she put this little amethyst jewel up in the top of her pen to match her purple pen. So it does some neat stuff like that. I've never seen a system like this on any other pen company, but a neat little thing that Visconti has on all of their regular edition pens, but especially on the Rembrandt. So one thing I always like to try to do is show you some comparable pens. That way if you have some other pens that are similar to this and you want to know what's comparable, or if just in general, it's always helpful to do some comparisons. So I'll throw some here at the end of the video. So similar to the Rembrandt, I think the one that's actually the most similar is another pen from Visconti, and that would be the Van Gogh. It's got the same clip, it's got the same magnetic cap design on both pens, similar grip, same nib. The difference would be the resin material on the Van Gogh is going to be a much more dramatic kind of variation to it. The overall style, the what do you want to call the taper, is a little bit different on the Van Gogh, and it's also a faceted pen. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's very, very fine facets that are cut all the way around the pen. And the neat thing about the Van Gogh is the swirl pattern that they have in the resins are all matched to specific Van Gogh paintings, and it comes in a really cool box that kind of matches it too. So that's going to be the most similar, but it's also more expensive. You're pushing more like $300, closer to $300 for the Van Gogh. Another one is actually from another Italian company, from Delta. It's called the Serena. It's a little less expensive. It's down closer to $100, but it's got a fine and medium nib on this one, a very wet writing nib. It is a screw cap, so it doesn't have that cool magnetic thing going on, but it's going to write fairly similar. It's a very, very wet nib on this pen, same kind of metal grip, so I thought it was worth throwing this one in the mix. And then the last one I have to compare is actually from another Italian company, from Aurora, the Aurora Ypsilon. Now the material on this one is not going to be nearly as kind of interesting or fancy looking as what's going to be on the Rembrandt, but it is a snap cap, so it's a similar kind of ease of use as what you would have. It's not magnetic, but it is a snap cap, snap to post on the back of it. And it's got somewhat of a similar style to it, but it's a little more, I don't know if you want to call it corporate, or a little more kind of professional look. I don't know exactly the way to describe it, but you can look at it and tell for yourself. But the advantage of the Ypsilon is a little bit cheaper. It's $99, and it has a wider range of nib sizes. So something worth pointing out to you. But those are some comparable pens to the Rembrandt. So the pricing on the Rembrandt, it's not an inexpensive pen, but it's a really high quality pen with a lot of interesting design and features to it. It's $165 MSRP, which is a bit on the high end for a stainless steel nib, but it's not astronomical. And I think if you're a fan of Visconti and you like their design, I think you'll find that it's well worth it. So you can check it out at gouletpens.com. You can see more pictures, you can check out more detailed technical information and stuff like that. If you like this video, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also ask any comments on YouTube or on our blog posts that we've done for the Rembrandt. Thanks so much for watching, and right on.